All right, ready to dive deep.
Always.
Today we're tackling G.K. Chesterton.
The one and only.
You sent over his responses to Robert Blatchford.
Right.
From the Blatchford Controversies, specifically on God and my neighbor.
Oh, that's a juicy one.
Chesterton's defense of Christianity, let me tell you, is wild.
It's a real intellectual boxing match, isn't it?
It's so engaging.
Blatchford was a heavyweight back then.
For sure.
In those socialist and rationalist circles.
Right at the turn of the century.
And with God and my neighbor, he really took aim at traditional faith.
Oh, it was like a 1-2 punch to the gut of belief as they knew it.
And Chesterton, well, he just wouldn't back down from a good scrap, especially when it came to defending his faith.
No way. Not Chesterton. He loved a good debate.
And the backdrop for all of this was early 1900s England.
Oh, talk about a time of upheaval.
Socially, intellectually, the whole shebang was getting shaken up.
Figures like Shaw and Wells were questioning everything.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just happening behind closed doors in some elite universities. These debates, they spilled out into the public square. You'd see them in newspapers, magazines. Everyone was following along.
It was the talk of the pub, for sure. People were hungry for these ideas.
And what makes Chesterton so captivating, at least for me, is his style.
Oh, he was a master.
He could turn an argument on its head faster than you could say paradox.
He loved a good paradox.
You think you've got him cornered, and bam! He flips the script, turns your logic inside out.
Like a verbal magician, honestly.
Absolutely. Take, for instance, the whole pagan Christs argument that Blatchford brings up.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic one.
Right. It's like the go-to counter to Christianity.
You hear it everywhere.
Blatchford points to all those stories across different cultures, dying and rising gods, you know the type, as if to say, see, Christianity, it's nothing special, just a rehashed myth.
Right, like it's all been done before.
Exactly. But Chesterton, he takes this seeming jab and spins it into this brilliant counter-argument.
This is where he shines.
He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, wouldn't it be even weirder if these stories didn't exist? Like, if cultures across time and continents hadn't stumbled upon this idea of death and rebirth, wouldn't that be the real head-scratcher?
It's like he's saying that these recurring themes, these echoes across cultures, they point to some deeper truth.
Bingo.
Something fundamental about the human experience that we keep trying to understand, even if we express it in different ways.
Precisely. It's not about dismissing the similarities. It's about asking why those similarities exist in the first place. That's classic Chesterton, finding the extraordinary in the seemingly ordinary.
Okay, but he wasn't all just clever wordplay and wit, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
He wasn't afraid to get into the nitty-gritty, to really wrestle with the big questions.
Oh, he dove right in.
And one of the things he hammers home is that Blatchford, in his view, totally missed the point when it came to understanding what theology is really about.
He thought Blatchford was playing checkers while Chesterton was playing chess.
For sure. Because it's not just about fact-checking the Bible, right?
Some historical detective novel.
Right. It's got to be about more than that.
It's so much bigger than that. For Chesterton, theology is about grappling with those foundational questions, the really big ones. What does it mean to be human? Do we have free will? What is the nature of good and evil? Those kind of questions. These are questions that shape our lives, our societies, everything.
Whether we realize it or not.
Exactly.
So it's not just about what happened way back when. It's about how those beliefs inform how we live our lives now. It's about living with the answers.
That's it, exactly.
Or non-answers.
And he uses this example of free will, which, let's face it, is a philosophical rabbit hole if there ever was one. But he says that even if we can't definitively prove that it exists.
Which, good luck with that.
Right. He says we still have to live as if it does.
Right. Because the alternative is kind of terrifying, isn't it? If we don't have free will, if we're all just robots acting out some pre-programmed script.
Determined by forces beyond our control.
And what's the point of even trying to make the world a better place?
If our choices don't really matter.
If we're not responsible for our actions.
Then morality, justice, it all goes out the window.
Exactly. And Chesterton saw this massive contradiction in Blatchford's determinist viewpoint.
Oh, yeah.
Because on the one hand, Blatchford's arguing that nobody's responsible for their actions, right? Everything's predetermined.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he's out there advocating for social reform, for education.
Trying to change people's behavior.
Exactly. It's like saying, you had no choice but to do that terrible thing, but you really should learn to make better choices.
The irony.
It's totally backward.
A classic Chestertonian contradiction.
And this is where Chesterton drives home this really crucial point. We all operate based on beliefs, whether we admit it or not.
We all have a framework.
We can try to ignore those big questions about good and evil, about free will, about purpose.
But they don't just go away, do they?
It's like trying to ignore a leaky faucet.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Sure, it might be easier in the short term to pretend it's not there.
Out of sight, out of mind.
But eventually, it's going to cause some serious damage.
You'll have a flood on your hands.
And that's what Chesterton's getting at, right?
Mm-hmm.
For him, facing those big questions head on, wrestling with them, that's part of what it means to be fully human.
To engage with the mystery of it all.
And that, my friend, leads us to another fascinating area of this whole debate. Miracles.
Oh, here we go. Now we're getting to the good stuff.
Because Chesterton, he refused to let the rationalists just write off the miraculous.
Which was kind of the trend at the time.
It was all the rage.
Right. It was the height of the modern rejection of traditional religion. Miracles. Those were just fairy tales for people who didn't understand science.
Right, for the superstitious and uneducated.
Exactly. But Chesterton, he pushes back against this dismissal. He says that just because something's rare, or because we don't fully understand it through our current scientific models,
Right.
it doesn't automatically mean it's impossible.
You got that right.
Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
I love that. Just because we haven't observed something yet doesn't mean it can't happen.
Precisely. And to drive this point home, Chesterton uses this wonderfully absurd image of a pumpkin turning into a coach.
Hold on. A pumpkin turning into a coach. Are we talking about Cinderella all of a sudden?
Haha, right. Of course, he's not saying this literally happened. He's using it as a metaphor. What he's saying is, just because we usually see pumpkins behaving like, well, pumpkins.
Because they're pumpkins.
Exactly. It doesn't mean that we know the ultimate reason why they can't suddenly transform into a horse-drawn carriage.
It's about challenging those assumptions we have about what's possible, about what we think we know for sure.
And about remembering that there might be forces at play that we don't even know about yet.
Don't put limits on reality.
Exactly. There might be laws of reality, forces at play, that we haven't even begun to comprehend. And Chesterton, he's pushing back against this very human tendency to assume that our current understanding, our current modern worldview, is the be-all and end-all.
Like we've got it all figured out.
Right. He's saying, don't be so quick to shut the door on mystery.
Oh, I love that.
It's about humility.
Humility, yes.
It's not about blindly believing that a pumpkin can become a carriage. It's about questioning the arrogance of assuming we've got it all figured out.
Which, let's be honest, we don't.
It's a humility we often lose sight of, you know?
Especially these days.
With all the breakthroughs, the advancements.
I'm swept up in it.
Easy to think, we've got this. But history has a way of humbling us, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. We've gotten things wrong so many times.
That's an understatement.
And that actually brings us to another really interesting aspect of this whole Chesterton-Blatchford debate. Their views on human nature.
Oh, this is where it gets good.
Because Blatchford, he does not hold back.
He goes for the jugular.
He calls out Christianity for its history of violence, the hypocrisy, all the ways humans have messed up, frankly, in the name of faith.
Yeah, and you can't really argue with him there.
Right. It's not like those criticisms are coming out of nowhere.
Centuries of history to back him up.
Exactly. We've got a track record.
Not baggage.
Big time. But Chesterton, and this is to his credit, he doesn't try to sugarcoat it or anything.
He doesn't shy away from it.
He owns it.
Yeah.
He acknowledges those failings. But what he does is he pushes back against this idea that Christianity has, like, a monopoly on human fallibility.
Right, like somehow Christianity invented messing up.
Exactly. He's saying, look, humans are flawed, period.
It's the human condition, right?
That's like that saying, to err is human.
Exactly. To forgive, divine maybe, but to err, totally human.
And to pretend that we can somehow create a perfect system, a utopia, where nobody screws up because we've engineered all the human flaws out of ourselves.
Please.
That's where things get dangerous.
It's delusional.
Because we're complex. We're capable of incredible things, but also of some pretty messed up stuff.
To think otherwise is naive at best.
At best. So for Chesterton, it's about applying a consistent standard, not letting religion off the hook, but also recognizing that we're all wrestling with this, with those human flaws, with that potential for good and evil.
We're all in the same boat.
Leaky boat.
And this is where Chesterton flips the script on Blatchford. He takes Blatchford's solution, which is essentially to, like, engineer a better society, right? To perfect human nature. And he turns it into this cautionary tale.
Hold on, engineer a better society.
Yeah. Well, Blatchford was a socialist. He believed that if you could create a more just and equitable society, improve material conditions, give everyone access to education.
Sounds good so far.
Right. That you could basically smooth out those human flaws, eliminate poverty, crime, all that.
So, social engineering. Create the perfect environment and you get perfect humans.
Kind of.
Okay, but where's the cautionary tale on that?
It's in what Chesterton saw as the unintended consequences. He argued that by removing personal responsibility, by saying, it's not your fault, it's the system's fault.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
You actually rob individuals of their agency, their ability to choose.
We're back to free will again.
Exactly. Chesterton saw a direct link between this kind of social engineering and the denial of free will. He argued that if you take away a person's ability to choose, even to choose poorly,
you take away part of what makes them human.
Exactly. And so instead of a utopia, Chesterton saw this path leading to a kind of dystopia where we're all just cogs in a machine.
No individuality, no freedom to screw up, to learn, to grow.
Right. And this is why I think he found such beauty and dignity in the people society often dismissed. Those who struggled, those who suffered.
Because their resilience, their ability to choose hope and love, even when life was throwing haymakers at them.
That was a testament to the human spirit.
It's that defiant act of choosing.
Exactly. Of choosing hope, choosing love, even when you're surrounded by darkness. It's the everyday heroism that often goes unnoticed.
And that's what Chesterton was so good at, wasn't he?
He had a knack for it.
Shining a light on those quiet acts of courage, those moments of resilience. He really believed that those stories, those glimpses of the human spirit shining through in the darkest of places, they were more powerful, more inspiring than any utopian vision that tried to erase struggle altogether.
Because without the struggle, without the darkness,
can you really have the light?
Can you really understand what it means to choose good, to overcome, to persevere?
I don't think so.
Me neither. And that's what's so brilliant about Chesterton. He reminds us that it's in those messy, complicated spaces where we often find the most profound truths about ourselves.
It's that contrast that makes it all so meaningful.
It's like you need both, right?
You can't have one without the other.
The light and the darkness. And for Chesterton, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical idea. He'd seen it.
Oh, he'd lived it.
Lived it. Walked those streets of London, met people struggling with poverty, and what struck him was their resilience.
Their capacity for love.
Love, sacrifice.
Even when life felt impossible.
Exactly. He saw it as this testament to the human spirit's ability to find light in the bleakest of places.
And that gets to the core of his faith, doesn't it? This belief that there's something inherently good and valuable in every single person.
Absolutely. That's what really fueled his opposition to Blatchford's ideas. Because when you start reducing people to mere products of their environment,
cogs in a machine.
Right, you take away their agency.
You're saying their choices don't matter?
Exactly. You're saying they don't have the capacity for good or evil, for rising above their circumstances. And for Chesterton, that was denying a fundamental truth about what it means to be human.
So the real miracle is right there in that choice.
Bingo. For Chesterton, it wasn't about pumpkins turning into carriages. It was about that human capacity for love, for sacrifice, for choosing goodness, even when life was hard. Those were the true miracles.
And it's a choice we all have to make every single day. To choose hope, even when we're surrounded by darkness. To choose love, even when it's hard.
That's the everyday heroism he was talking about. The stuff that doesn't make headlines, but makes life worth living.
In Chesterton, he reminds us that it's easy to fall into the trap of criticism, right?
Oh, it's so easy to tear things down. We see it all the time.
It's everywhere you look.
Pointing fingers, focusing on the negative. It's the path of least resistance, really.
But it's not enough, is it?
It's not. And that's the challenge Chesterton throws down. He's saying, okay,
yeah,
you've pointed out all the flaws, all the ways we fall short. So what now?
What's your solution?
What are you building in its place?
He's not letting anyone off the hook with that question.
Nope. And to be fair, he acknowledges that Christianity, with all its flaws and baggage...
And it's got baggage.
Oh, it does. But he says, look, at least it attempts to grapple with these complexities. With good and evil, with free will, with our place in the universe.
It's acknowledging the messiness of it all, but still striving for something better.
Exactly. And so the question he leaves us with is this. What are we building? What's our generation going to offer that's better than what came before?
It's a question worth pondering, for sure. Because it's not enough to tear things down.
Yeah.
We have to build something better in its place.
We have to choose hope, choose love.
Choose to create something meaningful. And on that note, my friend, I think we'll leave our listeners to ponder that very question.